so Roberto, we're going to start with your question, and we're going to kind of work backwards to the topic. And then Jodie and Dawn are going to weigh in as we go along the way. So this is something that's a specific strategy that career schools can use. This will be like a teaching process, so take notes, ask questions, okay, you guys? So all the marketing companies tend to get all big on market share, radius, geofencing, Roberto. So, you know, like ideally you want to have like a 30-minute bus ride to your school if you have a ground school. And if you're clever, you can do your marketing around bus stops and train stations that can make their way to your school. So that works within Google as a good way to maintain conversion rates. Another thing you can do is you can geo-target around lecture halls with big universities, because we know that about 55% of people who go to get their bachelor degree in whatever quit partway through, and they're sick of it. So those people still want to go learn, but they just want to learn to become an airline pilot or a phlebotomist. And so that's a very clever way to, you do a geo-target around a lecture hall. And you go, are you sick of these huge lectures? Consider going to career school, click here. And Google will only show those ads around the lecture hall. Crazy, crazy, crazy stuff. That's what Tammy Miles in our office does. But I'm going to teach you something that is kind of guerrilla marketing, and it's this. You position. The key in positioning is to dominate and own a segment. To your point, Roberto, have a segment, a marketing population, and most schools, non-corporate ones in particular, way underestimate what they need to do to own a market. And typically the schools do not have the resources to own market share like Coca-Cola or University of Phoenix or what have you. And so instead, what we want to do is shrink down the number of people that you really need to be in front of and to have a really connected relationship. Financial planners, they only need 100 people to have an amazing here's what you do. It's very simple. Step one is you take your program. Step two is you find the 100 largest employers that could potentially go and hire those students. Number three is you create a beautiful, layered, textured marketing campaign just for those 100 people and nobody else. And then what will happen out of that is you'll get amazing results. You'll have training dollars dumped upon your lap. You'll have employers sending you employees who they want to upskill. You'll get back channel referrals out of the HR department, of people that really like somebody, but they're not trained. You will just spike your retention, your grad rates, all kinds of good stuff. So that's what you do. That's the broad thing. And so now, any questions or any comments before I move on and start talking about some of these tactics? Anyone? Yes, Mary Helen.
Yes, one thing is that I'm in massage therapy. All of our employers have maybe 6 or 7 employees. So is that a different strategy? At the most, often our employers just have 2 or 3 in an office.
Well, I think it's slightly different, but I think what we want to really talk about here is it's intention. We really want to talk about intention, whether you have a huge union-based hospital or whether you have a practitioner that has 5 massage therapists. I think the idea, the philosophy here is employers. Well, here, okay, let's move philosophically off your point there, Mary Helen. We have Dawn Robson on our Zoom right now. Dawn works with our company in a past life. She's a senior HR leader with large companies, and a big part of what she has done is recruiting. So welcome, Dawn.
Thank you. And if I can add in here, I think the nice part about, so recruiters always have a hard time trying to find the right qualified people. So if a school could reach out to an employer that's in their area and sort of talk about the program, talk about what they've done, if somehow on your wall or on your testimonials, you could have an employer say, this person that I hired from this school was absolutely amazing. I hired them right away. They're the best person ever. What it's going to do is it's going to increase your brand within your school, which will allow your current employee or your current students to be an advocate for you. And I think the more you tailor and part with them, the better. If they can do reinforcements, if I'm an employer and I've got an amazing employee, then I may send them back to your school for continued training if I know what the level of that training is and for that training program that you guys are offering.
That's a perfect segue to Jodie. Jodie, welcome. I have a question for you, and our school leaders can weigh in as well. Well, what's more important for a career school, the students or the employers? So Jodie, let's get your thoughts on that. That's a crazy question, isn't it?
It is, and right off the bat, instinctively we want to say the students because they're the ones that bring in the money. But the thing is, if there's a block at the end, if your students have nowhere to go, then what are you going to do? So yes, the employers are a very, very important customer for your school. And I recently personally dealt with several schools because I'm in the middle of hiring. And let me tell you, the difference between different schools and how they welcomed me and how I was treated was sometimes night and day. So I'd like to point out for schools, when an employer comes to you and says, hey, I would love one of your students, it's like, that's the end all and be all. This is the goal you want for your students at the end. So those employers coming in saying, let me hire one of your students is one of the best things in the world.
So Scott, if you can unmute there,
Yes.
You've had about 35 years of experience in the career school space in many different roles. What's more important, the students or the employers of the students in terms of the survival of a school or the thriving of a school?
Well, I would think the employer is having a good, robust career services department job placement program, because if you do that, then, you know, the students are going to come. But, you know, if you just have the students, you don't have job placement, it may take a year, it may take 2 years to go out of business because the word gets out. The employers, one of the things I used to do when I was on the school side was have the students call some of the employers to get a good affirmation of what we're doing. Now, if a school, they can't go that route, then you're dead in the water, basically. You know, students these days.
So if the students can't be hired and raved about, then that really weakens the brand of the school. There's
and most students are doing, well, more and more people do more due diligence. I don't care if you're buying a car, buying a washing machine, or going to school. I mean, everything is on, you know, on the web as far as reviews and everything else. So at the very least.
Okay, so here Jeff Stock's on this call, this breakout, and this is kind of, we were talking in the previous thing about seeking fit, you know, which is important for everybody. And so the admissions team were qualifying. This is a, I won't name the name of the school. It's a beauty school. And what the owner of the school said was that the students that are in there are the brand. They represent the brand. They become the product once they become a student. And the quality of that student is reflective of the brand. And she managed to identify what the top graduates had in common when they were out in the world. And there were 8 things that she landed on. Things like they didn't chew gum. They didn't wear monogrammed shirts, like with graphics and stuff on them. They did not look at their electronic device once while then dealing with an actual human, and on and on and on. So she identified 8 of these things, and then she created a list for her admissions team, and they would come in for an interview, and the admissions reps had a green light to cut it short and say, you're our brand once you become a student, and these are the 8 things that make our brand world class, and you are good for 5 out of the 8 things. Here you go. There's 3 things missing. You're chewing gum, you're wearing a monogram shirt, and you looked at your cell phone. Come back in a month, and let's get all 8 of these things nailed when you walk in the door. And it's like, whoa, that's totally gutsy. But they were working with the end in mind. Some might see that as controversial. But again, they were working with the end in mind. In this case, working for a salon or being in business for themselves. Wow. Anybody have a comment on that? Is that a ridiculous thing to say?
Just stepping in from a sort of a broader post-secondary, I think we'd have a human rights violation if we approached screening students on the level of whether they chewed gum or what kind of clothes they wore. So, you know, I could see maybe in the private sector, but in a public, that's a little bit.
Yeah, brassy, hey?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's an extreme example, and I've left the school's name anonymous to protect the innocent.
That's something you can instill in that student while they're in school. I mean, I worked at automotive schools, diesel schools, where some schools, you know, the students would come in anything, their jeans, t-shirts, but the ones that were really, really successful, not only with job placement, but the courses that they were delivering had uniforms for their students. Same in a cosmetology school. If everybody's in their scrubs, uniforms, or whatever, when people do come in to interview or to check the school out, it looks very professional. So that's something I think, Greg, that has to be homegrown and instilled within the school. And then that professionalism carries out of the school. So.
All right. So here's some tactics that you guys can apply that will, if you want to engage in this strategy. I'm just going to do a little talking here, and then I'll invite questions after that. So the first thing you want to do is identify your 100 people. And it might be 50, it might be 20, depending on your market size. But the intention is to really envelop and make relationships with employers, both in personal and by way of LinkedIn. And the tool you want to use is called Sales Navigator. It's inexpensive, but it allows you to create little communities of 100 people per program, that kind of thing. So, shoot. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah?
Yes.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep, we can.
Okay, great.
Yes.
I just had my screen go a little sideways there. So then what you want to do, you guys, is get 10 or 12 testimonials from employers who've hired your grads and put them up on the wall. So what happens is, thinking outside in, the people who are either coming to a remote admissions meeting or in person, they're scared. Am I doing the right thing? Why am I here? You know, and there's this kind of little drag happening, cynicism, skepticism. And what you want to do is really create a trusted advisor with the admissions person. And one way you can do that is by creating herd credibility. And if you can give people the opportunity just to read 10 or 12 testimonials from employers, even students, this is the best school I've ever been to. And if you give them the opportunity to review a bunch of those, then the students can realize, oh, I'm in the right spot here. I can relax and I can just do business with my admissions rep. And then really, by extension, what happens is the employers are giving you permission to go and pursue your education. The second thing you can do is, out of the career services department, you can find 50, 60, 70 of those employers and go, and it's against the law, of course, to say I can't promise you're going to work here. I can't even promise you're going to graduate, but here are 50 employers who have hired our grads. And that's, in marketing, they call that brand writing. And so you're going to just, people will look and go, oh, I know that, I know that, I know that place, I know that place, I know that place. Again, it's utilizing the relationships with employers to instill confidence that a prospective student has made a good decision to explore being at that school. Okay, so this is the one it's not many schools do this, but it works really, really well. And I'll share this by way of a story. Client of ours have schools in small towns, and the small towns feed what we call dirt industry, logging, fishing, mining, and they had a business admin program, and so like somebody would take it for a year and go and run an office, as an example, and so what these guys did is they recognized, the school's called Discovery College. What they recognized was that there are just as many business admin people needed working for mining companies out in log sorts, smelly fishing areas, you know, whatever. And so they went to the career services department and said, create a participation only course on the dynamics of dirt industry. And it's things like, this is a front end loader, this is a skidder, these are the union laws, this is workman's compensation, all things that were very specific to dirt industry. And so they got their vanilla business admin program, and then they did this participation only digital badge or badge in dirt industry, so the jargon and what have you. And so here's how that plays out. Is there's one line item, the dynamics of dirt industry, that sits on that person's CV. So when that person goes for a job interview with Macmillan Bloedel Logging or Pan Canadian Seafood, the HR person, right, Dawn, will see that industry specific line item. And it's really often just one line item that will separate a person and get them shortlisted. So the game is to get people shortlisted, and that's a way to do it through differentiation. And so what happens is, if people who get their business admin certificate are fine working in an ATCO trailer in blue jeans, they make about 50% higher on a per hour basis than those working in a law office. Los Angeles, you have an IT program. You tie IT program in with the jargon and the peculiarities of the movie and music industry, and you get that little cert. And then what happens is, when you go and apply at a studio or a post-production studio or a movie house, that one little line item is going to go and separate you from all those other people with those vanilla IT certifications. Jodie, what do you think of that idea? That's kind of an oddball one, but it works really well.
It really does. And I would like to see more of that and bringing everyone in and expanding what all the schools do. It could do nothing but help your students.
It's about the law of sacrifice. So the whole game is to have the student with that one specific line item in their resume that will give them a strategic advantage over all of the other people that just get vanilla degrees and whatever it may be. Somebody may get a phlebotomy certificate and do a non-school accredited participation certificate in elder care. So what happens to that person, that phlebotomist, who's now going and interviewing for jobs at seniors' homes and assisted living? They have an automatic short-term advantage over everybody else.
So, hey, Greg.
Yes.
I'm understanding you. So I do some reading, and not that long ago, read something about people getting degrees. For somebody like, I'll just use for me. I got my degree, say 20 years ago. Is my degree going to be relevant now? Probably not as much, but as your point too, I think of as certificates. Certificates are going to be relevant. They're always upcoming. They're always new. They're always fresh. They're quick hits. There's something to add to your resume. And that's something to some of the reading I do. Some of us that are, I'm not trying to judge everybody's age or anything like that, but as they say, our degrees going to be relevant in 20 or 30 years from now.
I think Moore's
probably
law,
not.
Yeah, what are they saying? Knowledge doubles every couple of years. But this is just a different way of looking at career education. You've got your core associate degree, we'll call it. But what associate degrees, they get stamped by bureaucrats. And the world is dynamic and it changes. And so by really tying in the IT degree in Chicago to agribusiness, every single Monsanto and Cargill and the hundreds of subsidiaries will automatically look at that student. And so you can create little, they're made out of the career services department, because when you have to go and create them and get them recertified, it's a real hassle. So you make it as a participation only course. Now, how that plays out, Jeff, is that you can now start going to those 100 employers every 2 weeks, have an employer come in. A lot of you do this already, but maybe not to the extreme I'm suggesting. And that is have people come in for 15, 20 minutes and answer questions about the industry, answer questions about what, they'll get in and go, stay in school, everybody, almost there. I went to a technical institute myself, and they brought in people usually once a month, and they would just chat us up. And of course, they loved it because it was a recruiting ground. They make connections with students early on in. And then the last piece I might suggest is if you have a specific program where there's like a union, like an association, a trade association, where the employees hang out, like a trade and tourism association comes to mind. You take those business students you have and you give them a student membership into those trade associations, and then allow them to mingle in with the employers that you have coming to your school. And it all kind of works in a beautiful campaign to just connect. And then what happens is the employers get really jacked up. And then what they want to do is say, hey, I have some training dollars. I'm going to pay for half of my employees upskilling. It's like, whoa. So we see like Stryer doing that with Chrysler. We see Arizona State University doing that with Starbucks. Start working and creating these deals with these employers. So I'm talking a lot. Jodie and then Don, you guys want to weigh in? Jodie, how
I think Jodie stepped away. She had to push a few buttons. But I will add, as an employer, I think it's huge if an employer can feel connected to your students and the programming, it makes it much stronger, and it really encourages them to sort of both feel like they're a partner in your education, as well as really trying to appeal to you get those students through and hire your grads. So if you've got very engaged students that are doing really well, like with the company that's close by, it from a marketing perspective for subsequent students, it makes a huge difference. So I would concur with pretty much everything that Gregg has said. I think he's got some great tactics here to sort of involve employers in that process to help you market for new students coming through.
Excellent.
I have a quick question for you, if it's okay. What we're noticing is that, especially in metropolitan areas and big employers, it's definitely a challenge to connect in a meaningful way. It's difficult. It's possible. But the other area that we are trying to figure out how to really be impactful in is preparing the students, because they really need that resume to pop to get the interview, and they also need to be able to interview, because you ask students, tell me about yourself, and you see scared faces. So they need to develop a brand, they need to be able to talk about themselves and so forth. And I think that's an area that, especially today, because using LinkedIn and using social media, just like we brand ourselves as schools, our students need to figure out how to do that. That's an area in career development that I think we're trying to figure out how to plan for and find it challenging. What about everybody else? What do you guys think?
Anybody want to weigh in before I say my 2 bits?
I'll weigh in again just because I like to hear myself talk as well too. But
Excellent.
I don't want to give any away. I don't know if it's trade secrets or what, but when you talk about companies and things like that, we partner with a few companies out here on their tuition. What does a tuition remission have for certain companies to try to provoke their employees to go? We usually match whatever their tuition remission is from their companies to try to help spark, growth inside of their companies with those companies out there. So that's a way for us meeting certain students and companies in local areas and things like that to get their employees either the proper training. We've created certain degree plans, programs for them, small sections of whatever they need to help further them into their companies. Is something that we kind of do out here.
Yeah. Prior to this company in 2003 that Shannon and I started, I worked at University of Phoenix, and I did a deal with the Canadian Navy. 80% of people in the Navy and their families can get their education paid for. Those deals are everywhere, you guys. But the pre-step is to get those students all connecting. So to your point, Julia, one thing in having employers coming in for 15 minutes every couple of weeks, or having employers come in, HR folks come in and do some soft run role plays, like a Zoom meeting, where people can come in and they can just muck around and talk through these things that are fearful, and have the HR person, okay, hey, it's okay, you did great there, try that again. And of course, from as Dawn alluded to earlier, for an HR person who has to recruit, getting them in doing little pre interview kind of workshops, oh, that's golden, because they get comfortable with that HR person, and then they go back for the actual interview later, and they have a friendly face. Hey, there's my mentor who helped me get through some nervousness. So again, when you embrace those 100 employers per program, you bring them, draw them back in, and make them part of the thing. Employers love it, and it works on several levels. And then when you have those 100 people, they're like, it's positioning where leverage is.